Home and away spoilers: Irene's terrifying ordeal as Theo is attacked. This week on Home and Away in Australia, Irene fears for her future after a shock incident. A few weeks ago, Irene began exhibiting some unusual behavior, and this week it becomes clear that her memory issues are rapidly worsening. Irene was delighted when Alf mentioned that Rue was finally starting to feel better following her difficult time with foster child Eliza. However, when Marilyn repeated the update at the coffee cart later the same day, Irene joyfully reacted as if it was the first time she'd heard the news, leaving John puzzled, having already heard Irene say the exact same thing earlier in the day. Then, last week, Irene completely forgot that she had arranged to have dinner with John at Salt. John waited for half an hour before heading to the diner, where he found Irene happily working away, with no recollection of their dinner plans. Moshe was equally confused, as Irene had asked her to close up so she could have the evening off. When John showed Irene the text she had sent confirming their plans, she couldn't understand how she had no recollection of sending it. While she blamed her forgetfulness on exhaustion from baby Archie keeping her awake, and later agreed with Maz's suggestion that maybe she wasn't comfortable being in a restaurant surrounded by alcohol, it soon became clear that Irene's memory issues were worrying her. The following day, Leah asked Irene if she was still happy to cover her shift so she could go to Kirby's album launch. When Irene briefly hesitated, Leah reminded her that they'd previously discussed it. "Yes, Leah, I know," Irene snapped back. "Alright, I'm not a flippin' imbecile." However, as John became increasingly concerned by her confession, Irene tried to downplay things. She tried to write it off as sleepwalking, and rejected John's suggestion that she see a doctor, telling her friend that she was looking for reassurance, not for him to freak her out. Later, Irene opened up to John, admitting that her memory lapses were becoming increasingly common, and that she'd found herself standing in middle of the garden in her nightie, with no idea what she was doing there. Yet later this week, Irene suffers another scare, and it's one that could have had serious consequences. As she prepares to leave the beach house and head to work at the diner, Irene is stopped in her tracks by the sound of a loud cry. She waits, and a few seconds later, the sound rings out again. Suddenly, she realizes what it is: baby Archie, crying nearby. The house is otherwise empty. Harper is out, and Irene was meant to be babysitting, yet she has no recollection of agreeing to look after Harper's baby for the day. It's the first time that Irene's memory issues could have left somebody else in danger. And as she looks down at Archie, she fears what could have happened if she'd left the house. She calls John, and he arrives to find Irene in distress. She finally opens up about what's happened, and tearfully admits that she needs help. Will Irene be okay? This storyline is believed to be the beginning of Irene's exit from Summer Bay, after it was announced that Lynn McGranger was stepping back from the show after 32 years. Her final scenes are expected to air in August. "After almost 33 years in my dream role and working every day with people who I love, respect, and whom I now consider family, it's bittersweet to be closing the chapter on what has been the best and longest gig of my life," Lynn said in a statement earlier this year. "I am forever grateful to the best production crew in the world and to our genius writers whose doors are always open for everything they have done for Irene over the past 33-odd years. And I am so proud of the storyline which will see Irene out of the bay. Above all, a massive, heartfelt thank you to the fans for your continued love and support. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more movie spoilers next week. Goodbye and see you again."